I have a couple of questions here, well, several questions actually. This is with,
All right, good to see you. Yeah, take care.
this is with Marlin Stutzman, and first question I'd like to ask you about has to do with John Boehner and also other things. Everybody knows there's a lot of gridlock in Washington.
Yeah.
I mean, I just read the other day this Congress has got nothing done. It's been a worse situation in Washington. They didn't blame just Congress, but the president also. But what's going on? What's being done to improve that? Is Boehner leaving part of the solution? You didn't support him the last time there was a vote on it.
I didn't, but I don't think John Boehner was the reason bills weren't getting passed. We were actually passing bills out of the House, and I would say that the problem was in the Senate, where we have a 60-vote threshold on filibusters that are just way too easy for senators to call in, and Republicans control the Senate 54 to 46, and so they never get to that 60 votes to shut off the debate to pass a bill. So that's not a constitutional rule. I think that's what the problem is in the Senate. John Boehner, while I've had my disagreements with him, I think it does give the Republican Party an opportunity to get new leadership and a fresh face, and to go through the interview process in electing the next Speaker of the House to find out how the next Speaker of the House is going to do things differently to get things done. The president obviously is not engaged with Congress at all and works around Congress. We saw this with the Iran deal, which I think is a bad deal for our country and for Israel and other greater parts of the world. The president went around Congress doing an agreement rather than a treaty. I would treat it as a treaty. And if Senator McConnell would force the president's hand on it being a treaty, I think then the Congress can have the real debate and discussion, and then reflect the will of the people, because it's not a popular treaty or agreement at all. And so I think there's plenty of blame to go around between the White House, the Senate rules, and then also just the leadership style that we've seen over the past several years by all three leaders, frankly.
So the problem with the 60-vote rule to shut off the debate that you talked about, that can't be changed because of the 54 that says, oh, we like this.
It could be changed. It would only need a majority in the Senate, 51 senators, to say we're going to change the Senate rules and we're going to get rid of the 60-vote filibuster rule. And so that way they finally get to vote on bills. But right now you have to have 60 votes to just move procedurally forward.
So why hasn't the simple majority decided we're going to change that?
Well, it's because their explanation is because it's the tradition of the Senate. The way I understand it, the original filibuster rule, there's two types of filibusters, the Mr. Smith goes to Washington filibuster, and this filibuster it was designed to begin, at the beginning, to just allow for more debate. So if a senator said, I'm not ready, I don't want to shut off debate on the bill, so we have to have 60 members say, we're ready to go to a vote. Well, the problem is they say, we're not done debating, but they're never going to be done debating, and that's how they stop it. So at some point, they should be forced to vote on a bill.
Now, you describe yourself as a conservative. What is your relationship to the Tea Party? Do you consider yourself part of the Tea Party?
I describe myself as a Christian first, but as a common sense conservative. I obviously have a lot of friends that associate themselves with the Tea Party. I'm a farmer and a small business owner. I'm a Hoosier, and I associate myself with folks that just want to get things done and use common sense.
Okay.
And so I don't typically like to describe myself as one particular group or another. I want to try to figure out a way forward. But my conservative values is what really drives me, and my Christian worldview is what really helps me as well in making decisions.
Okay, very good. What is your stand on shutting down the government? I know some of the right-wing conservatives are still talking about doing that.
Yeah, I don't think shutting down the government is a responsible thing to do. We should be able to figure out how to get budgets passed, and that's been a problem for a long time in Washington. The latest disagreement has been over funding for Planned Parenthood. Since the videos came out showing what Planned Parenthood is doing, those videos have been are authorized or are shown to be authentic, and so I believe that we should not fund Planned Parenthood. At the same time, we need to do hearings, and we need to do investigative hearings and find out what is actually going on. I believe there's potentially illegal activity going on at Planned Parenthood, and there should be no funding for Planned Parenthood. And I should say there should be no funding for any organization that is selling baby body parts, period. But, we have budget problems in Washington that continue to set up these shutdowns. That's irresponsible. I want to make sure our military men and women get their paychecks. I want to make sure Homeland Security is operating to keep our country safe. I want to make sure that government is doing what it's supposed to. But we have to have a discussion over the Planned Parenthood funding. It's $500 million of taxpayer dollars that are going to fund an organization that many of us, I believe a majority of Americans, would not want to see their dollars going to fund an organization that is involved in this sort of activity.
And I just have a couple more questions. One, you are an agribusiness man.
Yeah.
But yet, in your mind, how does government financing differ from business?
Agribusiness farming is a difficult venture. There's so many variables that we just don't control in agriculture. Mother Nature. This year we had a lot of rain, and corn and soybean yields are very mixed. And so the farmer does the best job that they can in controlling their spending and their revenue, but there's just variables that they can't control, that we can't control. So I think that's why it's important that there be a safety net in place, and crop insurance fits that in a lot of ways. I fought to eliminate direct payments to farmers, but to put those dollars towards crop insurance to help manage risk. And if there's a crop failure, then there's a safety net there in place. And so agriculture is such an important industry to not only Indiana but to our country and to the greater part of the world. The American farmer is the most efficient, most productive farmer in the world.
Well, this kind of leads into my last question, and that is when we're looking at the presidential primary, Mr. Trump has said repeatedly, "I am a businessman." Well, can government be run as a business?
I think it needs to be run with business principles, but not even just business principles, but just common sense budgeting principles. I mean, our family budget, we can't spend more money than what we have. Our farming operation can't spend more money than what we have. You can't take on too much debt, and the federal government's budget is completely irresponsible. I serve on the budget committee, and we're spending $500 billion more than what we're taking in. We have $18 trillion of debt, and there's no urgency to try to fix that. So I think that it takes just common sense financial practices to run the federal government, and using the business. I think having that's why you see Carly Fiorina and Donald Trump and Ben Carson. They're all non-politicians, and I think that's what people like. They want somebody that's outside of that world saying maybe they get it, and so it's an interesting primary.
So my last question, it's probably not fair, but I'll ask it anyway.
That's all right.
Who would you rather work with, would it be Donald Trump, Dr. Carson, or Miss Fiorina?
I would say
choice number 4.
I like Carly Fiorina. I like Ben Carson. I like Marco Rubio. I was rooting for Scott Walker. I was looking for a Midwestern governor. While Donald Trump is definitely has good qualifications, there's also things that I'd be very concerned about him being the president. But I do think that he's brought a new sense of debate to the Republican primary that has been healthy. But at the same time, I'm also looking for a person that is going to lead with good character and has a respect for the Constitution, and also has a spiritual component to them that believes that we all are answer to our higher calling as well.
Thank you, sir. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
You too. Likewise. Appreciate it.